For decades, Team Canada has been the gold standard at the World Junior Championship. The red and white maple leaf carries huge expectations and a legacy of dominance that few nations can match. But with great expectations come great disappointments. When Canada fails at the World Juniors, it echoes through the entire hockey world. From last place finishes to blown leads in gold medal games, from historic upsets on home ice to humiliating box scores, Canada's worst World Junior moments are the stuff of nightmares. Today, we're diving into the most embarrassing, heartbreaking, and shocking failures in Team Canada's World Junior history. These are losses that changed how Hockey Canada builds teams, chooses rosters, and approaches international competition. From 1976 to 2025, we'll break down every moment where Canada's best young players fell short when it mattered most. So grab your jerseys and strap in. It's time to relive the unbelievable lows of Team Canada at the World Juniors. 1976, the 17-1 massacre. Honorable mention. Before we get into the modern collapses, we have to start with a result so brutal it still stands nearly 50 years later. In 1976, during an invitational-era World Juniors, Canada faced Sweden and suffered a loss that borders on unbelievable. The final score was 17-1. Yes, 17 goals against Canada. Sweden outshot them 79-14 and at one point scored 9 goals in 8 minutes. It remains the worst loss in Canadian World Junior history and one of the most lopsided games the tournament has ever seen. So, how did this happen? At the time, Canada wasn't sending a true national team. Instead, they sent the best junior team from any of the major leagues. That year, they sent the Sherbrooke Castors, a Quebec junior club team, to represent the country. Sweden, meanwhile, brought their best junior players from across the nation. The result was a complete mismatch from puck drop. Amazingly, because of the round-robin format, Canada still managed to finish with a silver medal after rebounding later in the tournament. But the damage was already done. That 17-1 humiliation became a turning point. The very next year, Hockey Canada scrapped the club team approach and began selecting true national all-star rosters. In other words, they quietly vowed never again. The game is a relic of a different era, which is why it stands as an honorable mention rather than a core failure. But it matters. It set the tone for everything that followed. Canada learned the lesson, built stacked teams, and went on to dominate the World Juniors for decades. Usually. Because as we're about to see, even with the best players in the country wearing the maple leaf, disaster can still find a way in. 2021. Empty arena, empty feeling. Bubble silver. In January of 2021, the World Juniors looked nothing like itself. The tournament was held inside a pandemic bubble in Edmonton. No fans, no noise, no energy, just silence. Team Canada entered as defending champions and absolutely ripped through the round robin. They won by lopsided scores, barely trailed at any point, and heading into the gold medal game, they hadn't allowed a single even-strength goal. This team looked untouchable. Then came the final against Team USA, and something felt wrong almost right away. With no crowd to feed off and no home ice buzz, Canada came out flat. The Americans executed a near-perfect shutdown game, clogging lanes and smothering Canada's attack. U.S. 10D Spencer Knight was flawless, while Canada looked a step behind, almost disconnected. In the eerie quiet of Rogers Place, the minutes drained away. Final score, USA 2, Canada nothing. No goals, no roar, just silence. To be clear, silver isn't a disaster. Most countries would celebrate it, but this one felt hollow. Canada had dominated the entire tournament only to no-show when it mattered most. There was no crowd to spark a push, no momentum shift, no emotional release. When the final buzzer sounded, it felt less like losing a championship and more like watching one slip away. This roster was stacked. Dylan Cousins, Bowen Byram, Quinton Byfield, Cole Perfetti, Devin Levi between the pipes, and Canada had looked damn near unbeatable. Instead, they finished with silver in an empty building, and it didn't feel like winning anything at all. Not a collapse, just an eerie, anticlimactic letdown that left everyone feeling nothing. 2024, the quarterfinal curse begins. If 2021 felt empty, 2024 felt sharp. Fresh off back-to-back gold medals in 2022 and 2023, Canada showed up in Gothenburg as the clear favorite once again. The roster was loaded, the expectations massive, but in a single elimination format, Dominance means nothing if you slip once, and Canada did. In the quarterfinal, they ran headfirst into an opportunistic Czechia team. Canada controlled play, owned possession, and outshot the Czechs 30-22, but none of it mattered. Chance after chance died on the Czech goaltender Michael Hrabal, who delivered the performance of his life. Frustration mounted with every save. The game crept into the final minutes tied 2-2, and then it happened. Jakob Stansel fired a seemingly harmless shot from the top of the left circle. The puck deflected off two sticks and found its way through the five-hole of goalie Mathis Rousseau with only 11 seconds to go. The disbelief was instant. Canada stood frozen as their opponents celebrated a stunning 3-2 upset. For the first time ever, Czechia beat Canada in a medal round game. And for the first time in 6 years, Canada left the World Juniors without a medal. At the time, many brushed it off as bad luck. One hot goalie, one bad bounce, one brutal night in a knockout game. Canada had deserved better, or so it seemed. 2013-2014, the end of an era, then panic. The 2013 World Juniors in Ufa, Russia, marked a moment Canadian fans never thought they'd see. The end of an era, and it happened pretty violently. Thanks to the NHL lockout, Canada arrived with one of the most stacked junior rosters ever put together. Nearly every top 19-year-old was available. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Jonathan Huberdeau, Mark Scheifele, Nathan MacKinnon, Jonathan Drouin. On paper, it looked unfair. On the ice, Canada backed it up early, going a perfect 4-0 in the round robin and earning a bye straight to the semifinal. Gold felt inevitable. Then Team USA hit them like a truck. In the semifinal, the Americans completely dismantled Canada 5-1. It wasn't close. The US was faster, more aggressive, and dictated play from the opening puck drop. By the second period, it was 4-0, and Canada looked shell-shocked. Players later admitted the Americans made them feel like they were standing still. John Gibson shut the door in net, and Canada's high-powered offense was nowhere to be found. The loss sent Canada to the bronze game, but the damage was already done. And it got worse. Canada lost the bronze medal game 6-5 in overtime to Russia, finishing fourth. For the first time in 15 years, Canada left the World Juniors without a medal. A run of 14 straight podium finishes was over. Fans and media were furious. How does a team that talented not even medal? The answer was uncomfortable. It seemed the rest of the world had caught up. If 2013 felt shocking, 2014 confirmed it wasn't a fluke. At the 2014 World Juniors in Malmö, Sweden, Canada once again fell apart when it mattered most. They were blown out 5-1 by Finland in the semifinal, then lost the bronze medal game 2-1 to Russia. Another fourth-place finish. 2 straight years without a medal, for the first time since the early 1980s. That's when panic set in. Canada was being outplayed. The aura of invincibility was gone. The Maple Leaf no longer scared anyone. Hockey Canada faced mounting pressure to adapt because the message was clear as day. Dominance was no longer guaranteed. Canada would rebound with gold in 2015, but the damage from 2013 and 2014 lingered. Those tournaments proved a hard truth. Canada could no longer rely on reputation alone. 2017, shootout on home ice, blown leads in Montreal. Some losses hurt more than others. And then there's 2017. The World Junior Championships returned to Canada, split between Toronto and Montreal. And Team Canada did exactly what the country expected. Marched straight to the gold medal game. The opponent, Team USA. The stage, a sold-out Bell Centre, over 20,000 fans, red jerseys everywhere. Canada versus USA for gold on home ice. It doesn't get bigger than that. And at first, it looked perfect. Canada exploded out of the gate, jumping to a 2-0 lead in the first period and making the building go bananas. But the Americans wouldn't go away. Twice in the game, Canada built 2-goal cushions. First 2-0, then 4-2. And twice the U.S. clawed their way back. By the end of regulation, it was tied 4-4. The game had everything. Momentum swings, highlight reel goals, clutch answers from both sides. Even overtime couldn't decide it. So it came down to the one thing Canadians dread most, a shootout. The Bell Centre went dead quiet. One by one, Canadian shooters were turned aside by U.S. goalie Tyler Parsons. Then Troy Terry, already a shootout hero earlier in the tournament, skated in and scored. That was it. Team USA won 1-0 in the shootout, 5-4 overall, capturing gold on Canadian ice. The silence was deafening. Why it stings? Canada led that game twice by 2 goals and still lost. At home, against their biggest rival. In a shootout. It was the second time in 3 tournaments Canada lost gold to the U.S., and this one cut deepest. Silver on home ice felt like failure. Years later, many Canadian fans still refuse to rewatch that shootout. Some wounds don't fade. They just sit there. 2019, quarterfinal collapse in Vancouver. If losing gold hurts, getting eliminated before the medals are even decided, again on home ice, is a different kind of humiliation. That's exactly what happened in 2019. Canada hosted the World Juniors in Vancouver and Victoria and drew Finland in the quarterfinal. What followed felt like a nightmare scripted by the hockey gods themselves. Canada led 1-0 deep into the third period. The crowd at Rogers Arena was tense, but confident. Just survive the final minute and move on. Then, with 46 seconds left, disaster. A harmless-looking Finnish shot from the corner took a wild deflection and slipped past Michael DiPietro to tie the game. The building went silent. Overtime. And OT somehow got worse. Canada was handed a golden lifeline, a penalty shot. Captain Maxime Comtois stepped in with the tourney on his stick and was denied. Moments later, Noah Dobson found himself staring at an open net. He went to tee it up, and his stick snapped in half. A once-in-a-decade stroke of bad luck. Missed chance. Again. Inevitably, Finland struck. A broken play and a ripped short side by Finnish forward Toni Uutinen buzzed past DiPietro, and just like that, it was over. 2-1 Finland. Canada was eliminated in the quarterfinals on home ice, something that had never happened before. Blown lead, missed penalty shot, broken stick on a sure goal, and no medal at home. The loss sparked national outrage and another round of soul-searching at Hockey Canada. In 2019, Canada pretty much lost the illusion that dominance was guaranteed. And somehow, this still wasn't the bottom. 1987, the punch-up in Piestany, international disgrace. Let's rewind to one of the darkest moments in World Junior and Canadian hockey history. This wasn't a blown lead or a heartbreaking loss. It was a self-inflicted implosion that embarrassed Canada on the world stage. The infamous punch-up in Piestany. January 4th, 1987. Piestany, Czechoslovakia. Canada versus the Soviet Union in the final game of the tournament. Cold War tensions were already boiling, and while the Soviets were out of medal contention, Canada needed a win, and possibly a lopsided one, to secure a medal, maybe even gold. Midway through the second period, with Canada leading 4-2, a scuffle between Theo Fleury and a Soviet player ignited absolute chaos. Both benches emptied. What followed was a 20-minute all-out brawl with knucks flying left and right. The refs tried everything. Whistles, warnings, nothing worked. In an absurd last resort, arena staff turned off the lights to stop the fight. When it finally ended, the ice was littered with gloves and sticks, and IIHF officials were furious. The punishment had never been seen before. Both teams were disqualified. Canada's games were nullified, and a team that was poised to medal walked away with nothing. Every player received an 18-month suspension, later reduced to 6, and the coaches were banned for 3 years. It became an international scandal overnight. Back home, reactions were split. Some fans, and loud voices like Don Cherry, praised the Canadians for standing their ground, but Hockey Canada was mortified. A potential gold vanished because of a total lack of discipline. Decades later, the punch-up in Piestany remains a wake-up call. The 1987 team, loaded with future NHL talent like Brendan Shanahan and Theo Fleury, might have won something, but we'll never know. It's a permanent reminder that at the World Juniors, losing your composure can cost you everything. 2010, the home ice collapse. Saskatoon silver. Another loss that still haunts Canadian hockey fans, the 2010 World Junior Final in Saskatoon. Canada entered that night chasing history, a 6th straight gold medal, something no country had ever done. They were on home ice, riding 5 consecutive championships, and facing Team USA, a strong rival but one Canada had already beaten in the round robin. With a sea of red and white in the stands, everything felt lined up for another first place. What followed was chaos. The gold medal game turned into a wild, momentum-swinging thriller. Late in the third period, however, Canada found itself in serious trouble, trailing 5-3 with under 4 minutes left. The six-peat was slipping away until Jordan Eberle happened. Already a World Juniors hero, Eberle scored twice in the final minutes, obviously including the tying goal, with roughly a minute remaining. Saskatoon went insane. The building shook. Canada had escaped again, and heading into overtime, it felt like destiny was back on their side. But overtime delivered the gut punch. A U.S. rebound led to an odd man rush, and American defenseman John Carlson wired a shot past Martin Jones. Just like that, game over. The USA won 6-5, silencing the crowd and stunning a nation. It was only the Americans' second-ever World Junior gold, and they won it on Canadian ice. Why it stings? Eberle's miracle comeback made the loss even more brutal. Hope shot up, then disappeared instantly. That Carlson goal ended an era, snapping Canada's dominance, and announced that the U.S. was now catching up to Canada. Many players from that team still say it's the loss that never really left them. And somehow, the pain was just getting started. 2011, Buffalo's soul crusher, the biggest collapse ever. January 5th, 2011, Buffalo. Canada versus Russia for gold. Coming off the Saskatoon loss, Canada was desperate for redemption, and for 40 minutes they looked unstoppable. They dominated the first two periods, scored early, and skated into the second intermission up 3-0. Russia looked finished. Canadian fans, and even some players, could already feel the gold medals being placed around their necks. Then came the third period. Russia scored early to make it 3-1. Still fine, Canada had a 2-goal cushion and plenty of time. But instead of settling things down, panic set in. Russia kept pushing, and Canada started unraveling. 1 goal became 2. 2 became 3. In a matter of minutes, the game flipped completely. Russia scored 5 unanswered goals in the third period, turning a 3-0 Canadian lead into a 5-3 Russian victory. The Canadian bench sat frozen, the Buffalo crowd in disbelief. What had looked like an automatic W turned into a nightmare. It remains the greatest comeback in World Junior final history. No team had ever erased a 3-goal deficit in the third period to win gold. Over 6 million Canadians watched live as the collapse unfolded. Headlines the next day were brutal. Captain Ryan Ellis later admitted some players were already talking during the intermission about who they dedicate the win to. He said the loss felt 10 times worse than 2010 because this time they had the gold and let it slip. This wasn't bad luck, a shootout, or a hot goalie. It was a full-scale collapse on the biggest stage. For a hockey nation built on closing games, blowing a 3-0 lead in the gold medal final cut deep. The Buffalo meltdown haunted Canada for years and forced serious soul-searching about composure and mental toughness. Even now, mention Buffalo 2011 to a Canadian hockey fan, and you'll get the same reaction, a long pause and a wince. 1998, almost dead last in Helsinki. Total humiliation. We've covered heartbreaking silvers and brutal collapses. Now we hit what was long considered the absolute low point of Canadian junior hockey. The 1998 World Juniors in Finland nearly broke Hockey Canada. How bad was it? Team Canada finished 8th out of 10 teams, nearly dead last. The sport's biggest powerhouse ended the tournament at the bottom of the standings, a result that still feels unreal. The context makes it even worse. Canada entered Helsinki riding a dynasty, having won 5 straight gold medals from 1993 to 1997. Confidence bordered on arrogance. The roster wasn't empty of talent either. Simon Gagne, Eric Brewer, Manny Malhotra, Matt Cook, real NHL futures. They even cut a young Brad Richards from camp. On paper, this team should have competed. Instead, everything unraveled. Canada scored just 13 goals in 7 games and went 2-2 in the prelims, forcing them into a quarterfinal where they lost to Russia in overtime. That alone knocked them out of medal contention. But the humiliation was just beginning. In placement games, a deflated Canada was shut out 3-0 by the U.S., sending them to the dreaded 7th place game. Their opponent, Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan won 6-3. Yes, Canada lost to Kazakhstan to finish 8th. The game wasn't even televised back home and was played in front of 169 people in a small Finnish rink. It was Canada's worst ever World Junior finish, and the hockey world was in shock. 5-time defending champions, damn near dead last, losing to a nation with barely a hockey infrastructure. Critics tore into Hockey Canada's outdated philosophy. Too much size, grit, and old-school hockey, while Europe took on speed and skill. The game had evolved, and Canada hadn't. Helsinki forced a reckoning. Hockey Canada rebuilt its entire program of excellence, modernizing coaching, development, and international preparation. As one official put it, this was the tournament that almost broke Hockey Canada. This was rock bottom, pure humiliation. But it also became the painful lesson that fueled Canada's resurgence in the 2000s. Still, no one who has lived through 1998 ever wants to see anything like it again. For years, Helsinki was hockey's forbidden word in Canada, the ultimate nightmare. 2025, the Ottawa home ice disaster, ultimate failure. And now we reach the freshest wound, and for many, the most embarrassing chapter in Team Canada's World Junior history. The 2025 World Juniors in Ottawa had everything you'd want for a storybook ending, and everything you wouldn't want for a collapse. Sky-high expectations, home ice pressure, shocking upsets, internal chaos, and a finish that left Canadian hockey stunned. Much like many of these failures, on paper, the roster looked unstoppable. Canada iced 10 or more current first-round NHL picks, including generational talent Gavin McKenna, along with blue-chip prospects like Matthew Schaefer and Porter Martone. Media buzzed about a dream team. Anything less than gold on home ice was supposed to be unacceptable, but almost immediately something felt wrong. Canada opened with a convincing 4-0 win over Finland, then ran headfirst into disaster. Against Latvia, a team Canada had demolished 10-0 the year before, they lost 3-2 in a shootout, the first ever World Junior loss to Latvia. Latvian Tendi Lenards Feldsberg made 55 saves and stopped all 8 shootout attempts. Canada looked flat, undisciplined, and rattled. The shockwave was instant. Things didn't improve. An uninspired 3-1 win over Germany was followed by a 4-1 loss to the United States, where Canada was thoroughly outplayed. They finished third in their group, their worst showing in years, while piling up a tournament-high 113 penalty minutes in just 4 games. The home crowd was restless. Then came the quarterfinal. Again, it was Czechia, the same team that eliminated Canada the year before. With about 4.5 minutes left, Canada was trailing 3-2, and Ottawa was on the edge of their seats. Bradley Nadeau ended up burying a rebound in front to tie it up late. Was this game going to OT? Not quite. A careless kneeing penalty gave Czechia a power play. With 39.4 seconds left, Adam Jecko put the Czechs up. Before the arena could even process the game-tying goal, Czechia scored and took the lead right back. The clock ran down. Game over. Canada eliminated at home. Canada finished 5th, failing to reach the semifinals for the second straight year, something that hadn't happened since the early 1980s. The fallout was brutal. Roster construction was questioned. Coaching decisions were shredded, especially the benching of star prospects. Discipline was indefensible. Offensively, Canada scored just 13 goals in 5 games. Even preparation came under fire after reports of canceled practices due to fatigue. Head coach Dave Cameron was informed he wouldn't return before the tournament even ended. Hockey Canada executive Scott Salmon summed it up bluntly. You can blame me. Why this one stings the most? This wasn't bad luck. It was a systemic failure. On home ice, in front of sold-out crowds expecting a medal. Canada became the first defending champion since 1981 to miss the semifinals in back-to-back tournaments. The world no longer fears the Maple Leaf. The final image says it all. Canadian players standing frozen on Ottawa ice, heads down, as fans filed out in silence. Echoes of Vancouver 2019 and Buffalo 2011 all over again. This was a reckoning, and it's going to hurt for a long time. When you zoom out from all these moments, the 17-1 blowout, the bench-clearing brawl, the blown leads, the last-place finish, and the home ice meltdowns, one truth becomes unavoidable. Even the most powerful hockey nation in the world can fail. Team Canada's World Junior history isn't just golden goals and dynasties. It's also shattered confidence, public embarrassment, and lessons learned the hard way. Every collapse has changed something. The 1976 humiliation forced Canada to rethink who they sent to tournaments. The 1987 punch-up taught the cost of losing composure on the world stage. The 1998 disaster nearly broke Hockey Canada and triggered a full philosophical overhaul towards skill and development. The collapses of 2010 and 2011 exposed cracks in mental toughness and game management. The medal drought of 2013-14 proved the world had caught up. And now, after the back-to-back quarterfinal exits of 2024 and 2025, Canada faces its biggest challenge yet, a global junior hockey world that no longer fears the red and white. The rest of the world is hungry. The US, Sweden, Finland, Czechia, even smaller nations like Latvia, now believe they can beat Canada because they have. Talent alone no longer guarantees anything. Execution, discipline, chemistry, and preparation matter more than ever. That may be the ultimate lesson here. Every win has to be earned. Past dominance buys nothing. The Maple Leaf isn't just a badge of honor, it's a target. And the moment Canada slips, someone is ready to take advantage. But history also shows something else. Canada responds. Pain has always fueled change. The darkest moments often precede the greatest runs. Just as 1998 led to the golden era of the 2000s, 2025 could become another turning point if the lessons are actually learned. That cycle of pride and pain is what makes the World Juniors so powerful. The highs feel unbeatable, the lows feel unbearable. And when Canada finally rises again, it will mean more because of everything that came before. So here's to the next chapter, to the next group of Canadian kids carrying the weight of history and trying to rewrite it. Because if there's one thing this tournament has proven, it's that Canada will be humbled, but it will always come back swinging. Thanks for watching. If you want to hear the story of a player who didn't just break barriers but quietly became the standard for American hockey, check out our video on Mike Modano, how a shy kid became America's greatest hockey player. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and drop what you think Team Canada's biggest World Juniors fail is in the comments. See you in the next one.